All right. So, office hours with just me and Sam. We all love a one-on-one office hour. And for this one, we're going to go over API endpoints, Braze API, the API guide, and just overall, let's get you more familiar with it. And we'll tell you like our go-to endpoints. So if you go to Braze, go to the API section, we are probably in this section quite often. Here, I mean, on the main page, there's like a full list of all the endpoints, and you can search for them here. The API overview page is kind of helpful too because of this section, but you'll memorize this in just a second. So all of our customers, and actually, I think I hear a tiny bit of echo. I'm gonna try to do noise cancellation. Actually, it's okay now. Okay. So all of our customers are on their own like different dashboard servers or dashboard clusters is what they call it. So if you actually look at like if you go to our dashboard, this is our for now marketing dashboard. We are on O2 EU dashboard, meaning like our server is using some European server that's I don't know, maybe physically in France. I don't know if that's what it means, but I think Braze divided up their dashboard servers so that there's not so much strain on a single server. For example, I think they have one server dedicated to like their biggest customer, which I believe was Pokemon Go back during the COVID days where there was so much activity. So you can see like why one customer might have needed its own like dedicated server. I don't know if that's still the case. I don't know if that's actually 100% accurate, but something like that. Like the bigger customers. The US O2 dashboard is the HIPAA healthcare compliant dashboard. There's like extra security settings built into that one. So if you notice, all of our healthcare customers will all be on US O2. And that's also what makes Braze actually one of the more popular like leading choices for marketing software because not a lot of other competitors have this HIPAA compliant capability. So that's a little bit interesting fun fact there. And then it comes in order. So O1 was the very first server around. Then they added 3. Then they added 4. They added 6 before they added 5 for some reason. Then we're all the way at 7 and 8. So like when I first started at Braze, it was only up to 6 and 5 didn't exist. 4 was the dedicated one. So I only had 1 customers in 1, 2, 3, and 6. And then 5 came around, 7 came around, 8 came around. Oh, there's 10 now? That's crazy. And actually, if you notice, 10 has a slightly different structure. So it says .us versus all of our other US customers says .iad. So that's something to look out for. This is the dashboard URL. So if you go to our dashboard, it'll use this one. The REST endpoint is what they need to use for the API endpoint base URL. So it's really just this column and then this column that's most useful for us. The SDK endpoint will also be relevant at some point, but just not nearly as much as these two. Or really just the middle one, this REST API endpoint. And then 2 Europe ones, and then 1 Australia, and then 1... I don't know what ID stands for, actually.
Could be Idaho. I don't know.
No, Idaho would not get its own dedicated server. I feel like good guess though.
Yeah.
I feel like it's some other part of the world that's really growing in Braze usage. Yeah. So that's one place I come just to like remind myself like what the REST endpoints are. And then pretty much the other place that we spend most of our time is the endpoint section, right? And then in the endpoint section, they're also categorized. The objects we'll go to a little bit later, but the endpoints. So let's actually try to follow along here as well with our. So if you go to settings, APIs, and identifiers, that's where you can also see. That's where you can create API keys. They also added a ton more like features and dashboards which didn't exist not too long ago. But this is like, what are you using and what keys are being like used too much, or I guess you can create alerts. So this is like if you notice that your API key is like being used way more than normal, and like you see unexpected volume, you can kind of maybe check like either it got leaked and someone's using it maliciously, or our script got broken and now it's like making so many more calls than it should be, or it's like not making nearly as much calls as it normally does and like something's broken. It's actually that last case is probably the most common case. Something's broken and an API key that usually gets used 100,000 times a day is getting used like 40 times. Something's wrong. Our users are not getting messages or whatever it might be. Oh, this is cool. Oh, nice. So, are you familiar with API rate limits?
Not really. Can you go over it?
Yeah, it's pretty much how much you can make a call to that endpoint, like per minute or per 3 seconds. So, users track is the most commonly used endpoint where you're using it to update the user profile. It's like how you log custom attributes, custom events. So that one has to have the highest threshold, or rate limit, which is 3,000 every 3 seconds. So if you imagine like you can update, like think about like the biggest Braze customers in the world that are like huge companies. Like at every second, someone's doing something on their app. So it's like 3,000 user interaction and activity for every 3 seconds. That's like 1,000 per second. There is a need for that type of volume for some of these major companies. And then some of the ones that get used like very rarely have like 1,000 per hour, like 50 per minute. So I don't know why they decide per minute per hour, and they're all on the API pages themselves if you look for it. But I guess it's also on the dashboard, so that's convenient. Yeah. We normally don't have to worry about going over this, but because like I don't think we will ever make a call that heavy. But it is something to think about every time we use it. Like for example, Braze calls campaign and canvas details quite often. Where is that? Okay, that's not even being listed for some reason. Oh, all other endpoints, 250K per hour. So for example, like Braysmith, when we try to do like a full export of all canvases and their details, it's usually just one call to the canvas list endpoint. Well, maybe one call per page, and you could load 100 per page. So, and not a lot of customers have more than like 1,000. So let's say that's 10 calls, and then let's say we make a call for every single one of those 1,000 campaigns for the details. That's only 1,010 calls in like maybe a 3 to 5 minute time span. So we will rarely go over this one. But like if you imagine it's like some job running like constantly, like this is just what to keep out for.
Okay.
So okay, back to the API endpoint. So okay, let's actually go over what some of these are endpoints. There is an endpoint for a lot of different categories. So there's a bunch of endpoints that has to do with everything catalog related. So that's kind of helpful. Anytime a customer talks about automatically updating their catalog, like this endpoint is going to be involved. Cloud data ingestion, we don't get to use too much because a lot of times the data teams are working with this one. But this is like if a customer has a Snowflake integration, like they'll probably use one of these things. And then also you see a mixture of like get and post. Get is usually like the read-only fields that we allow the MCP to like use to just fetch data, just to read and view data. Versus post could oftentimes mean like do something, like trigger sync or create catalog or like update or delete. They're all post calls. There is also a delete call too. I'm not entirely sure why some delete functions have the delete API type versus like I'll show you user delete is a post call, even though it's deleting users. Why that's the case, I'm not sure. I feel like Braze still keeps users like hidden in their backend even after getting deleted. So maybe that's why it's not a complete delete call versus like the other delete that we saw might be like a full on like delete and never retrieve ever again. Maybe an educated guess. So okay. Any questions so far, like with any of the topics I covered?
No, not so far.
Okay. Most of the times you'll see get and post calls. I'll actually jump to the export section, which is really helpful. So export campaigns and export canvas. That's really where a lot of the most helpful features are. We are in here all the time. We know these endpoints very well. And then for you, if you're also going to be helping us build Bracesmith and render, these endpoints are going to be really helpful for you. So we'll jump to here, but pretty much campaigns lists, campaign details. I'll open analytics and send analytics to actually. So we kind of talked about this yesterday, but let's like review. So campaigns list, export campaigns list. Use this endpoint to export a list of campaigns, each of which will include its name, campaign API identifier, whether it is an API campaign, and tags associated with the campaign. Groups of 100 sorted by time creation. So pretty much this endpoint allows us to go say like, give me every single campaign that lives in your workspace. So in our case, if I go to campaigns and I X out of it and I run that endpoint, I should get 53 results. And then it's giving me 100 per page. So there is a page parameter. So if you actually look at like, so get calls, everything gets done like in a URL. There is no like body, request body. It's just a single endpoint and all the parameters live inside there. And you see how, so once again, question mark, pretty much same thing to the link templates that we talked about. It's the start of this question mark marks the start of all parameters. Give me all the parameters that you're interested in. And then say like page 0. That's the default. If you don't specify page, optional, the page of campaigns to return defaults to 0. So for us, it doesn't matter because we only have one page of campaigns to return. So the first page will have 53 results. I actually think that if we try pulling page 1 for our dashboard, I think it's either going to error or it's going to return nothing because there's nothing on like page 1 of our dashboard because we have less than 100. Right? Does that make sense?
It does.
Yeah. The other thing is include archived false. So include archived is defaults to false. So it's like saying when I make the API when I make the API call to scrape all your campaigns, do you want me to look for archived ones too? And the idea is kind of like if it's archived, do you want me to get the details for it, or do you want me to even bother like looking for it, or are you actually interested in archive campaigns? Then I'll go through everything. So actually, I gotta take that back. We will get 53 if we set include archived equals true, because our 53 has a mixture of archived and non-archived things. It's like it's either archived or not archived. And I wish I could run this for you easily. We actually can. I'll actually show you in a webhook format.
Okay.
I'm actually going to show you this live because I always think it's helpful to see it. So let's make an endpoint, office hour campaigns canvas demo. And then we will just grab all of campaigns and canvases. Oh, so this is how you make the API key, right? And like you see how they're in the same buckets that we see in the documentation. So actually, no, it's not the same buckets. Like the Braze docs categorize it as export, and there's some in messages, like send messages. But then in Braze, when you try to make a key, it's like everything related to campaigns is under the same section.
Okay.
So it's not the same like one-to-one. Like for example, campaigns trigger send is under is this one. Campaigns it's this one. Campaigns trigger. Yeah. But then so it's like there's some endpoints that are under the messages category and the export category, which is campaigns, all mixed into a single campaign bucket in the dashboard. It's just differently organized, but not a huge deal. And then it's this nice thing about campaigns and canvases, it's pretty much one-to-one. Like, I think there should be a canvas version for every campaign version, except there seems to be one difference.
Okay.
I think it's this one, sends ID create, because I don't see a canvas ID create. This one even isn't even like a campaign dot. So there's also sends data series. We can look into that later, but very like parallel, except maybe like one extra endpoint for campaigns. Okay, I'm gonna create an API key. Let's we'll copy that, and then so what people typically do is they use a software called Postman, which is like a third-party API software. There's like a whole UI for making Postman calls, and it looks like this. This is what I first learned, where I first learned how to make API calls, but it's like a whole new software you have to learn, and I don't like that you have to leave Braze. And this was kind of intimidating for a marketer or like a beginner technical marketer for me 5 years ago when I was first learning how to use it. So what I actually like to do is I like to just build directly in Braze, and that makes it just I can stay in Braze. I'm a lot more familiar with it. Webhooks are very helpful. So office hours, campaign, canvas, demo. And I'm keeping the eye on the clock because I do have to head out in 4 minutes. So let's see how fast we can do this. So let's see. Let's try to actually make one successful campaign list call, which is here, right?
Yep.
So our endpoint, our base URL is this URL that we saw earlier.
Mm-hmm.
So that's gonna go here, right? And then you always have to erase that extra space. We do this so much that I know there's gonna be an extra space. This is our specific endpoint. So from your EUO2 server, what endpoint do you want to hit? I want to hit the campaigns list endpoint. And actually, ooh, let's see if we do get something. We might not be able to get anything here. I might have to explain that in a separate call, but where is this? And then, oh, so we can actually use one of these. Like this is like an example URL that has everything. Yeah, let's just grab this whole thing. So yeah, the other thing is sort direction. Do you want oldest ones first or newest ones first? And then there is a last edited time. Like, do you want to specify that? So those are the 4 request parameters. And then when we make this API call, it's gonna spit out every campaign that meets those criteria, and it's gonna give us the campaign ID, which is pretty important for getting the details. It's gonna tell us when it was last edited, the name of the campaign, and it's going to tell us whether it's an API campaign or not. We can talk about that next time. And then it'll tell us the tags associated with it. So tags are kind of important in Braze because it's related to a lot of these like back-end jobs. Let's see what happens if we try getting this. So I'm going to change it to rest fra o2. I don't think this, sorry, I'm realizing this might not work because we still need to put in our, well, let's try it, our key. So the key is always authorization, and the API value is bearer space, and the API key. It's always in that format.
Okay.
Something to like memorize. Okay, we have 1 more minute. I think we can do it in 1 minute. I lost that page, I think. Okay. So, and if this doesn't work, just at least hope. And then the other one is called content type application / JSON. This is very common. You also see it in every single page. So right here, content type application JSON authorization bearer your REST API key.
Okay.
Like they're all there. I just have it memorized because I've done this so many times. I would also try coming back and try doing the same thing from your end to see if you can replicate what we did. If I run this though, I don't think I'm gonna get anything. Did I get something? I don't think you can make REST calls from a webhook. So this actually has to be done using connected content or the actual like Postman software that I mentioned.
Okay.
Let me try erasing just these last things. Like make a simpler. You don't have to have the full thing. I think you can actually literally include nothing, and that's
Mhm.
you can still make a successful API call. But if you want to specify like I only want page 0 and I don't want to include archived ones, then you like specify it. So I think what happens is so it is working correctly, I'm pretty sure. Let me see if I can make a typo and get an error. I guess there's no way for us to learn or no way for us to see, but it is retrieving data in the backend to this endpoint. And in the backend, there should be a result for however many campaigns we had minus all the archive ones. So if we had more time, I would have then shown you what the campaign details endpoint shows us, which you grab one of the API campaigns, or it's like campaign IDs, you feed it through, and then it'll give us more information. Maybe next week we can show you like the connected content version of it, so we can actually see it.
Okay,
So,
that sounds good.
all right, that's it for today. And yeah, we'll talk more next time.
Okay, thank you.